If you have your Bibles today, we're going to be in Matthew chapter 5. Matthew chapter 5. Hey, how many people in the room today, you'd raise your hand and you say, I am so thankful this morning for coffee? How many of y'all in the room today are thankful for coffee? Yeah, some of you are raising your coffee cups. That's great. That's great. That's how I know you won't go to sleep in the next hour and a half no, I'm kidding. But no, we like coffee. On Tuesday night, we were having a residency meeting right here in the arts and crafts room. That's the last room on the right. And so we have 17 students that are going through this one-year residency program with us. And so this particular Tuesday night, I was supposed to speak on communication, okay? And we had decided we were going to have a breakfast night. And so we asked several of our team members. Caleb was involved, Carissa was involved, Nick Toller was involved, Ellie Hayes was involved. We had several of them make a mobile coffee shop, and they were making like custom lattes for people. And so there was a line of people that were ordering specific lattes right here in the community center. Y'all are like, can we bring this to Sunday morning? No, it took way too long. But they were amazing. I mean, Gracie, weren't they amazing? They were so good. They were so good. So we had a great time. Well, I was the last one to order, because I'm a servant. But I was the last one to order, and so I was the last one to get my order. Well, by the time that they had made all the different drinks, it was time for me to get up and teach. And I just told them, I said, listen, I've never had a drink with a double shot of espresso while I was teaching, so I'm not sure exactly what direction this is going to go into, but I'm going to tell you this, it's going to be fun and it's going to be quick, okay? And it was both of those things, although, y'all can testify, I wasn't crazy, but it was just a lot, right? We love our coffee. There's a book that's called The Coffee Bean. It's by two authors, John Gordon and Damon West. And the outline of this book, if I'm going to summarize it for you, this is what it's about. It's about putting different objects into boiling water. And so first in the book, they put a carrot into boiling water. And what happens to the carrot is the carrot gets softer, right? And then the next thing that they do is they decide, hey, they're going to put an egg in boiling water. And what happens? The egg gets harder over time. And then they put a coffee bean into the boiling water. And the coffee bean does something different than the carrot. It does something different than the egg. Because, see, the coffee bean begins to be diffused into the water. Instead of it changing, it actually changes the environment around it. And the whole point of the book is not about cooking. It's not about coffee making. The whole point of the book is about influence. Influence. How we, as believers in Jesus, should be an influence on the culture around us. Very important. And so what I want you to know, the outline, the focus of today's message, if you want to know where we're going, is that Christ followers are world changers. Christ followers are world changers. Now, what does it mean to be a world changer? If any of you in the room have been through your place, which we just got through with some last week, we share that we have some values as a church, that we have a mission as a church, that we have what we call outcomes as a church. Where do we want people to be? And one of these outcomes we want our people to be world changers. And here's how we define it. We say this at Christ's Place: I will change the world by shining the light of Jesus to every person, culture, and cause. I will shine the light of Jesus into every person, culture, and cause. Jesus calls us to this. In John chapter 17, it's going to be on the screen, verses 15 and following, this is what he says: I do not ask that you take them out of the world, but that you keep them from the evil one. They are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. Sanctify them in your truth. Your word is truth. As you sent me into the world, so I have sent them into the world. Growing up in student ministry, maybe some of you students in the room have heard this, especially as you go to your campuses throughout the week. Especially for you college students, as you go onto a campus, we are called, according to God's word, to be in the world. We can't escape it, but we're not to be of the world. In other words, we're supposed to be different, we're supposed to be distinct, but we still all live in the world. And when we live in the world, we are ultimately supposed to make a difference, to be the kind of people that God's called us to be. What's He called us to be? I'm glad you asked. That's what we're going to talk about. Matthew chapter 5, verse 13 is where we are as we continue in our series on the book of Matthew, taking it passage by passage, verse by verse, breaking it down. Here we are, Matthew chapter 5, Sermon on the Mount. This is what Jesus says to the people on the hillside that day. You are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. I want you to see three specific things as we think about this commission that Jesus has just given to all believers for how we are to be world changers. Number one, I want us to recognize today that we live in a decaying and a dark world. You see, as Jesus looked over the crowd that day, He saw the disintegration of society and the darkness that surrounded them. But we are now centuries removed from this teaching, from the moment in time where He spoke these words. And if the theory of evolution is true, then should we not have moved on from some of the same problems that they were dealing with when Jesus was speaking on this hillside? The unfortunate fact that every single one of us can admit in the room, no matter how much we love our science, is simply this: we haven't moved on. We have not moved forward. We have not evolved in a good way. In fact, in many ways, our struggles today are even greater than they were at this point in time. You think about the decaying and the dark world that we live in. You think about the fact that we have more advancements, but more anxiety. More advancements, but more anxiety. We live in a generation with significant technological advancements. We see it all around us. There are medical procedures and devices and strategies that are now allowing people to live longer. And when they used to, 25, 30 years ago, die from a certain illness or disease, we now have a better treatment or a better surgery or a better pill or better something to make people live longer. We have seen amazing communication advances, that we literally have the entire world that can fit into our pocket. And we can communicate with anyone in any culture, even through satellites in the most remote of areas. We can do that instantly. I mean, think about the advancement that we have seen in that area. We have transportation advancements, where the whole world has become much smaller now. And we can begin to think about all the places that we want to go, either for business or pleasure or whatever it is. We have so much advancement. So much advancement, but so much anxiety. I mean, you think about it, over the past year, 40% of Americans have indicated some type of anxiety disorder. 43% of Americans surveyed in 2024 said that they were more anxious about their lives that year than they were the year before. You see, if we're having more and more advancements, shouldn't our anxiety level be diminishing? Shouldn't it be going down? The surveys show pretty significantly especially among young people, that one of the greatest drivers of a rise in anxiety and depression rates is someone's screen time. It may be on a phone, on social media. It may be watching something. It may be a computer. It may be whatever it is. But there is a definite scientific link now in young people between more screen time and more anxiety. These advancements that we've seen, this communication that has opened up the world around us, this constantly, hey, who's doing what and where are they and how are they and what's going on here, has not led us to less anxiety. It's led us to more. It's taken us to a worse place when I believe it was intentioned to take us to a better place. And so I have two sons, 11-year-old and an 8-year-old. And we're right in the middle of this process. And we've told them, you're not getting a phone right now. You're not getting a phone. Because we don't want to give them unrestricted access to the entire world. We don't believe as Christian parents that that is the right way that we should be raising them right now. And listen, everybody's got to listen to a conviction from the Lord. They've all got to follow the Lord's leading in your life. I'm not saying that you have to do it in the exact way that we're doing it. But I've been a youth pastor before, and I've heard the worst of the worst stories. And I've seen it over and over again in counseling situations. Why is this happening to this young person? Why are they being formed in this way? And it's if they have unrestricted access to the entire world and everything that's in it, it's not a healthy thing. Especially as their brain is just simply being formed. And so my 11-year-old, he's in 5th grade. And so I asked him a few weeks ago, I said, Jake, how's that going? You know, a lot of your friends have a phone. Yeah. I said, how's that going? He said, it's going okay. He said, but there are times when I get in conversations with people at school, and they're not bullying me because I'm taller than them, but what they are saying to me is, you can't even talk about this because you don't even have a phone, Jake. Like it's some type of less than situation. And I want to say this. I know this is an aside specifically for parents today, but I want to be very clear. As Christians, do not give in to the pressure from the world to be a certain way. Because just because we have the opportunity for advancement does not mean we need to take said opportunity around every corner. I just want to say that. That's very specific. That's very nuanced to a certain group of people. But I just believe very strongly we have more advancement, but we have more anxiety. What's going on there? Something. We need to be wise in the world that we live in. Secondly is this. We've got more knowledge, but we've got also more foolishness. More knowledge, but more foolishness. To get knowledge, listen to me, kids, you used to have to know something called the Dewey Decimal System. That's how you got knowledge. You got knowledge, and you had to know this complex numbering system to go to the library to find some type of resource on a certain topic, and now it's totally different. And AI tools like ChatGPT have supercharged our ability to have knowledge. And so you can get knowledge about most anything in the entire world. But unfortunately, as the knowledge has advanced, foolishness has also advanced. It's crazy. But we shouldn't be surprised because Paul talks about this in Romans chapter 1. He says, for although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking. And their foolish hearts were darkened, claiming to be wise. How many people in the culture right now are claiming to be wise? Because they have all of this knowledge, and because they have all of these degrees, and because they have all of these experiences and titles behind their name. But that is not what equals wisdom. Because claiming to be wise, they became fools. Verse 23, they exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. In other words, they choose idol worship rather than God worship. But they claim to be wise. but truly their hearts were darkened and they were foolish. We live in a world where there's more knowledge, but more foolishness. We live in a world where right is wrong and wrong is right. We live in a world that is upside down. Next, we live in a world where there is more comfort, but also more conflict. More comfort, but more conflict. Think about the different elements of comfort that we have in our modern society that societies before have not had. We can order anything right now in the service, and truly many of the products that we can order online could be at our doorstep by the time that we got home. Think about the amount of comfort that that brings to us, the amount of time that can be saved through that. Think about just the fact that I hear commercials about this all the time. A mattress. A mattress can be the right height. It can be the right temperature. It can be the right firmness. It can be the right everything. Listen to me. Sleep is important, okay? But here's the thing. If we have all of these comforts in our society, would it not be logical for people to chill out more? I mean, they're getting a better night's sleep. Should they not be a little bit calmer? A little bit more understanding of other people? I mean, you got a good night of sleep. You're able to get everything directed to your door. You don't even have to go in the store and look for something, do all these different things. No. Instead, we found just the opposite to be true. People are more tense than ever before. People want to fight you about everything. They want to argue with you about everything. They don't want to keep their views to themselves. They don't want to keep their opinions to themselves. And so everything is a fight. In the workplace, at school, everything is we got a conflict, more conflict, more conflict, more. We live in a decaying and dark world. John MacArthur said this about this passage. Instead of improving the moral and spiritual quality of his life, man's discoveries and accomplishments have simply provided ways for him to express and promote his depravity faster and more destructively. Modern man has simply invented more ways to corrupt and destroy himself. It's so important that we recognize that that is the world in which we live, but we get back to the beginning. It's not just about triaging the world in which we live, but it's saying Christ followers are world changers. So how are we supposed to influence the world like a coffee bean in the midst of all the decay and in the midst of all the darkness? And Jesus is very clear to those believers and to us in here today that we are to change the world by being salt. Now, this is a little bit confusing because we don't use this terminology a lot in our current modern culture. But to them, it would have made complete sense. Because salt in that day and time was seen to be incredibly valuable. In fact, during a part of Greek history, it was called divine. Salt was called divine. The Romans believed that salt was the most valuable thing in all of society, in all of the world, second only to the sun. The sun was number one, and salt was number two. That's how important it was in their culture. In fact, some Roman soldiers were paid in salt. That was their form of payment. And so everyone on the hillside that day would have understood that Jesus was not just simply asking them to be a meaningless salt shaker that was on a dinner table, but he was saying something very important to them and to us today. So what does it mean to be salt? This is not as clear of a teaching as some of us would like to believe. Like you, I've heard many different interpretations and examples of how Christians could be salt. You could point to the fact that it's white, signifying purity. It adds flavor to an otherwise bland, meaningless world. It can assist in cleaning a wound. I mean, have you ever been to the ocean and you've gotten into the ocean with a cut or something like that, and it's hurt when you first got in there, but you realize that it heals a lot quicker? You know, it is different things that can happen. I mean, obviously we can help people to get out of their sin, but I believe there was one overarching characteristic that Jesus had in mind when he was teaching this lesson, and it was about preservation. You see, salt draws out moisture from foods and creates an environment where bacteria and mold and yeast cannot multiply, thus causing the normal process of decay to be stunted. That's what salt did in that time. That's what it still does today. To slow down the decay, to slow down destruction, to slow down things like mold and bacteria from being able to ruin things. And in our own house, we actually had an example of this past week. Tuesday afternoon, it was about 3:30. My son James, he's just gotten home from school. He's eating a snack and looking out into the backyard. My father-in-law, he's there with him. Jake's there. No one else is in the house. We're all in different places. And James looks out the backyard, and he's eating his snack. And he says, Pawpaw, that's what he calls my father-in-law. He says, Pawpaw, our backyard's on fire. On fire. And he says, What? What are you talking about? And my father-in-law, he looks out the back window, and sure enough, our backyard is on fire. And so he immediately goes outside, and he gets to one of our water hoses that's probably not hooked up because, it's just gotten warm enough to rehook them back up, right? And so he hooks it up real quick, and he begins to pull it out, and what he sees is this. Our neighbors, on a burn ban day, yes, decided to burn some leaves. And they have a legit basin, but the wind has taken one of those leaves out of the basin, and it caught our entire fence separating our two houses on fire. Caught our fence on fire. And then what it started to do, because in that section of our backyard, there's a lot of pine needles and leaves, it loved that. So it just took off. And so he's trying to make sure he can do everything he can to spray that water hose so that the fire doesn't come any closer to any of our houses. But it's not just about that. It's about back behind our house are total woods. I mean, there's woods everywhere. And so they begin to go and get the other neighbors down the street, and they begin to bring their hoses. I mean, running full speed. Grown men are running to connect the hoses together. Why? Because we've all heard stories in our own communities of people that have had their houses completely burned down recently. I mean, we know what's possible. And here we are in this very situation. So they connect the hoses to one another. They begin to stretch it on out. They're able to get the fire put out. But I got home, and my neighbor that had helped with this, he told me this was chilling. He said, Josh, we were only about 30 to 45 seconds away, not minutes, seconds away from the entire woods behind our house being completely burned down. Multiple homes in the process would have been burned down. It would have been a multi-day firefight. I don't even know how we would have gotten the fire trucks back there. I don't even know how we would have gotten significant water back there. It is not easy to get to. If it weren't for that water hose in our yard, we would have had a significantly different backyard, and potentially multiple homes would have burned to the ground. And here's the thing. It's a great reminder for each and every one of us, because the forces of evil are like a destructive fire. And every single day they are alive and active in our culture. And here's the truth. Christians have been set on this earth to preserve and to push back that fire. And to say, I don't want you to destroy any more homes, any more families, any more children, any more young people, any more senior adults. We don't want anybody to be destroyed. And Christians are on the front lines with the gospel of Jesus Christ, saying we're going to put out all the fires that we possibly can. We want to be salt in a world that is decaying and is being destroyed. We want to push back the forces of evil. That's what we want to do. So we think about the text. It says, but if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. You see, the only way that salt loses its taste is if it is contaminated with some other materials that would be added in. And let me tell you this, we must not be contaminated by the world around us. We must stand firm in the truth of God's word, no matter how unpopular it is, no matter how difficult it is. Because as Christians, we should not be motivated by greed. Instead, we should hold back those forces in the workplace that want to take every business to just be an instrument of greed. We are not pressured to be like other parents. Instead, we want to teach our kids the truth. We are not consumed with selfish ambition. Instead, we want to model a lifestyle of contentment. We are not obsessed by the outward appearance, but instead we want to help people with the deep struggles that are below the skin surface that they have in their life. This is what it means to be salt in a decaying world. But he also says something else. He says that we can change the world by being light. Verse 14 says, you are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light it under a lamp, put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. You see, sometimes being salt is behind the scenes. But what Jesus is saying here is this: light is never hidden. It's never hidden. That's a reason why I don't believe that anybody, anywhere, can be a secret Christian. Now, certainly I understand that there are people in other areas of the world, and they cannot be as open with their faith as we are here because they don't have freedom of religion. I understand that. But it does not mean then that they cannot go and have conversations and share their faith and develop relationships with people. I've been in a closed country before. I understand what it means to have the government say you cannot be a Christian in this nation, and for people to say, thank you for that suggestion, but I'm going to continue to be that. Understand, it's a different thing. But at the same time, it applies to all of us. At the end of the day, our faith should not be hidden. We cannot just push it under the rug. We have to be people that are saying we're going to be brighter lights more and more every single day than the world around us. And I love what we have in the World Changer slogan that I shared earlier. I will change the world by shining the light of Jesus to every person, culture, and cause. And so how can we, as Christ followers, be the light? Well, I think we break down that statement. Why do we choose that statement? Why do we say that you had to be a light to every person, culture, and cause? Well, let's break that down. How can we shine the light to every person? To every person. You see, we sometimes think about a light being a giant spotlight that shines up in the night sky, and it shows people from miles away that there is a light there. But listen to me. That's not the only kind of light, is it? I mean, how many of y'all use your iPhone flashlight to walk in your room at night when you're getting up? That's very pinpointed. That's very small, but listen to me. I believe that what Jesus has in mind here is he wants us to shine the light to individual people. He's going to put individual people into your life. They may work with you. They may be in your family. They may be friends of yours. They may live in your apartment complex, in your dorm, wherever they are. Listen to me. He's going to put individual people in your pathway. That's why we give people a My Five card. Because it says, who are 5 people in your life that you can share the gospel with? Who are 5 individuals, not just groups of people, not just stages that you're standing on and gospel presentations that you're making, not just group text, but individuals. Individuals. I believe that God is very interested in us shining the light of the gospel to individual people. That's what he wants. That's what he desires for our life. So when we're having these prayer moments, you're like, why in the world are we doing this? We're doing this because we want to emphasize the importance of shining the light of the gospel onto individual people. You know, there's this slogan that became popularized. I'm not exactly sure who it originated with, but it says, preach Christ at all times. If necessary, use words. It's really not a good slogan because according to Scripture, it is necessary to use words. People are like, why are you different? Could be 10 different reasons why you're different today. Might have just had Mexican food last night. You know, it's like, what? Why are you different today? You got to open your mouth and you got to actually share with someone why you are different, why you are changed. Why don't you live like everybody else? It's necessary to use words, and we want to shine the light of the gospel to every single person. What I love, listen, and I believe in this so strongly. We've been talking about My Five. We've been talking about sharing our faith here for a couple of months, and you're like, Josh, I'm tired of it. Can I just ask you to have a little bit different of an attitude? Here's why. Here's what I'm not tired about. People coming up to me every single week and sharing a similar story. I got serious about somebody on my Five card. I'm praying for them. I got an opportunity to share the gospel with them. I got an opportunity to invite them to our church. I got an opportunity to have a conversation one night with them. I'm never going to get tired of that, y'all. Because what that shows me is that people are hearing God's word and they're wanting to apply it. They actually want to do that. They actually want to live that out. And I would encourage every single one of us to continue to make that a front burner issue on the top of our mind to say, we want to share with those who don't know Jesus. But also, we shine the light of Jesus to every culture. To every culture. Jesus doesn't just care about your neighborhood or your group of friends. He cares about people in our own community that may have come in and are a part of a different culture. He cares about people in different countries that practice different customs and different traditions. And listen to me, as your pastor, I am praying that over this next year at Christ Place North, we can do more together than ever before to shine the light of the gospel into different cultures. I believe that is so valuable. I believe that is so important. We need to have that be one of the most important things that we do as a church. So we shine the light into every person, into every culture, and into every cause. Here's the reason why we put that in there. We put that in there in 2018. We developed this language because God puts different passions in every believer's life. Different passions. Many of those passions are shaped by your history, your past, your circumstances, the environment that you were brought up in. Every Christian has a different spiritual gift. As many of you have seen, many of us have different personalities. So we're going to gravitate to different things. And you know, as a believer in Jesus, here's what I want you to know. If God puts a passion in your life for a certain cause or for a certain area of culture, that is amazing, I would never want to extinguish that light. I would want that light to continue to go out, to continue to pursue what is just, what is right, what the Lord wants in that situation. But we understand that we've all got different passions, different focuses. And so we want to celebrate everybody together. We want to celebrate everything that God has given us a passion to do. And so there are many in our church right here that care specifically about shining the light of the gospel into foster care and adoption. And I love that. I love that. We've got many people in our church that want to shine the light of the gospel into young moms who are adjusting to a completely different rhythm of life. I love that. We've got so many people in our church, both here at North, at Central, at East, some of my good friends that are shining the light of the gospel in a very dark and decaying world of politics. And I love that. I'm so grateful for that. We've got people in our church that are shining the light of the gospel to fight against injustice. That is a great thing. That is an amazing thing. And altogether, what we should be doing is we should be celebrating each other's passions, helping them to continue to go out and to shine the light of Jesus into every person, every culture, and every cause. But I want to give you one last warning. You know, if you will never shine the light if you don't walk in the light. You will never shine the light if you don't walk in the light. And you know what extinguishes light quicker than anything else? Sin. Sin in your life will extinguish the light faster than anything else. And so I want to give us a warning from Ephesians chapter 5. It says, therefore, do not become partners with them, that is the world. For at one time you were darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of the light, for the fruit of light is found in all that is good and right and true. And try to discern what is pleasing to the Lord. You won't walk in the light, you won't shine the light unless you walk in the light. We need to be people that are constantly walking in the light. And say, we're not going to go back to being contaminated by the world. You see, Christ followers are world changers. It's so important that we are salt in a decaying world and light in a dark world.